Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles. I never thought silence could be so powerful, that it could cut deeper than any words, any accusations, any anger. But when I heard my wife say those words, those casual, thoughtless words, something inside me changed forever. It started on a Wednesday, just another mundane evening in a life I had thought was happy. I had come home from work later than usual, tired but looking forward to seeing her. Emma had always been my safe place, or so I believed. But that night, as I walked up the stairs, I heard something that stopped me cold. Her voice drifted down the hallway, muffled but unmistakable. I don't even want to hug him anymore. I froze. The words were light, almost laughing, like she was joking with someone. But the weight of them crushed me. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stood there listening. Her voice continued, more hushed now. I couldn't hear the response, but whoever she was talking to must have asked something, because she sighed and answered, I don't know. It's just different now. I don't feel the same. I feel nothing when he touches me. Nothing. The pit in my stomach opened wider, swallowing me whole. I should have barged in. I should have demanded answers. But instead, I turned around, my body moving on instinct, and walked back down the stairs. I sat in the dark of the living room, staring at nothing. I tried to tell myself that I had misheard, that maybe it wasn't what it sounded like. Maybe she was talking about someone else. Maybe it was just a meaningless venting session to a friend. But deep down, I knew better. It explained so much. The way she barely looked at me anymore. The forced smiles. The way she turned away from my touch, always finding some excuse. I clenched my fists. I could confront her. I could storm upstairs and demand to know what she meant. Maybe she would apologize, maybe she would cry and tell me she didn't mean it. But I didn't want apologies. I wanted her to feel what I was feeling right now. The slow, cold realization that something was dying. Something she had killed without even realizing it. And so, right there in that dark living room, I made a decision. I wouldn't yell. I wouldn't fight. I wouldn't even give her the satisfaction of knowing she had hurt me. Instead, I would let her slip into her own grave, one small step at a time. And I would never touch her again. Never hold her. Never comfort her. I would erase myself from her world. I sat there for a long time, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the house. I listened as she eventually came downstairs, her footsteps light and carefree. She walked into the kitchen, humming. I sat in the darkness just beyond the doorway, unseen. Hey, babe, she called, oblivious to the storm that had already begun. I didn't answer. She poked her head into the living room and saw me sitting there. Hey, she repeated, softer this time. Why are you sitting in the dark? I finally turned to look at her. And for the first time in our marriage, I felt absolutely nothing. Not love. Not anger. Not even pain. Just nothing. Long day, I muttered, standing up. I'm going to bed. She blinked, surprised. Oh, okay. I walked past her, not touching her, not even brushing against her arm. She didn't notice. Not yet, but soon she would. The change started subtly. Small things. Things she wouldn't notice at first. I stopped touching her. Completely. No more lingering kisses in the morning. No more hand on her lower back when we passed in the kitchen. No more absent-mindedly reaching for her hand when we sat on the couch. I became a ghost in my own home. Emma, in all her obliviousness, didn't catch on immediately. That first morning after I overheard her, I rolled out of bed without a word and went straight to the shower. Usually, I'd give her a quick kiss before leaving for work. But this time, I walked past her like she wasn't even there. She glanced up from her phone. Everything okay? Fine, I said. Short, distant. She frowned, but that was it. A small wrinkle of confusion before she turned back to whatever conversation she was lost in. At dinner that night, she was scrolling through her phone as we ate, something that had become more and more frequent. I watched her, studying the way she smiled at something on her screen, the way she typed quickly, eager, excited. I bet she hadn't smiled like that at me in months. A few days passed. I spoke when necessary, but never more than that. I stopped initiating anything, conversation, affection, attention. I wasn't cold. I was just not there. And then, something shifted. One night, she reached for me in bed. Not for love. Just a mindless, sleepy kind of reach the way we used to. She expected my arm to be waiting for her, the way it always had been. Instead, I was on my side, my back turned. My body language screamed, "Don't touch me." She hesitated, then pulled her hand back. The next day, as I poured myself coffee, she came up behind me and lightly touched my back. "Hey," she said softly. I didn't turn around. Morning. I felt her hesitate again. I could almost hear her thoughts, trying to decide whether to push or let it go. She let it go. It took another week before the cracks started forming. One evening, she tried to slide into my lap while we watched TV. A habit she had started early in our marriage, something that used to make me feel warm, needed. I barely moved, but it was enough. She paused, picking up on the shift, the absence of warmth. "You're being weird," she muttered, sliding off me instead. I just kept my eyes on the screen. "Am I?" "Yeah," she scoffed, crossing her arms. "You've been acting strange for days now." I sipped my beer. "Guess I'm just busy." Silence. She was waiting for me to fix it, to say something that would snap us back to normal. I didn't. Instead, I grabbed the remote and changed the channel to something I knew she hated. That night, as she climbed into bed, she rolled onto her side and sighed dramatically, as if waiting for me to ask what was wrong. I didn't. She sighed again. I smiled in the dark. A few more days passed. And finally, she started to notice. "Are you mad at me or something?" she asked as we stood in the kitchen, her arms crossed. "Because it kind of feels like you're mad at me." I looked at her, my expression neutral. "Why would I be mad?" She shifted. "I don't know. I don't know, you've been different." I shrugged. "Just busy." She scoffed. "Right?" She didn't believe me. Good. That night, I saw her scrolling through her phone again in bed, typing furiously. She was upset now, truly upset, and I could feel her trying to find an outlet. I knew exactly where she'd find it, and I knew exactly who she was messaging. My wife thought she had stopped wanting to touch me. She had no idea what it felt like to truly be ignored. But she was about to learn. Took 2 weeks. 2 weeks of cold, calculated distance before she broke. Before she did exactly what I knew she was going to do. She ran straight into the arms of another man. I had suspected it from the moment I overheard her whisper those words. "I don't even want to hug him anymore." No woman says that out of nowhere. No woman suddenly loses all affection for her husband unless she's already giving it to someone else. Now I had proof. The shift was gradual but clear. At first she was just irritated. Annoyed that I wasn't paying her attention, that I wasn't catering to her emotions. She picked fights over nothing, trying to get a reaction out of me. But I gave her nothing. And when she realized I wasn't going to snap, she stopped trying. She stopped asking what was wrong. She stopped caring that I wasn't touching her, wasn't talking to her. She just detached. And the moment she detached from me, she attached herself somewhere else. It started with more frequent late nights. "Drinks with the girls," she claimed. She made sure to say it casually, like she wasn't waiting to see if I'd react. I never did. Then came the wardrobe changes. Tighter dresses, shorter skirts, perfume she never wore around me. I remember the first time she left for one of her girls' nights. Standing at the door in a skin-tight black dress I had never seen before. Her hair styled, lips glossy, smelling like desperation. I sat on the couch, pretending to scroll through my phone, not even looking up. She lingered. "Going out?" I asked, finally glancing at her. She smiled, but it was hesitant. "Yeah, just meeting up with Sophia." I nodded. "Have fun." Her smile faltered. She expected me to ask questions, to push, to accuse. Instead, I gave her freedom, because I wanted her to take it, and she did. Over the next few nights, the pattern repeated. She went out more, stayed out later, came home tipsy, smelling like a mix of alcohol and something unfamiliar, something that didn't belong to me. And then, I found the final nail in the coffin. It was a Sunday morning. She was still asleep, curled up under the covers, her phone on the nightstand. I picked it up, unlocked it, scrolled, and there it was. Last night was amazing. Can't stop thinking about you. Wish I could have stayed longer. Miss you already. The messages were from a number saved as Eric. Not Sophia. Not a coworker. Not a friend. Eric. I had never met an Eric. But I was about to. I locked her phone and placed it back exactly where I found it. Then, I stood up, grabbed my keys and walked out of the house. I had work to do. Emma thought she had won. Thought she had slipped away cleanly, unnoticed. She had no idea that I had been watching her every move. She had no idea that this was exactly what I wanted. And now it was time for the final act. I had everything I needed. The texts, the late nights, the new perfume, the desperate need for attention. Emma thought she was being careful, but she didn't realize I had already set the trap long before she took the bait. Now it was time to meet Eric. I found him easily. He wasn't just some random fling. He was her coworker, a mid-level sales rep who worked in a different department at her office. Mid-30s, fit, single. The kind of guy who had probably been circling her for months, waiting for the right moment. And I had given him that moment. I spent the next few days gathering more evidence. I wasn't sloppy. I didn't break into her phone again. I didn't need to. She was careless now, acting like a woman who believed she had nothing to lose. She stopped hiding her messages, stopped sneaking away to text. She even smiled at her phone in front of me. That's when I knew she was completely comfortable. She had rewritten our marriage in her mind, convinced herself that I had simply lost interest, that I had let her go. She thought I was the weak, detached husband who didn't fight for her. She had no idea I was the one pushing her further away. That Friday, she told me she was having a weekend away with the girls. I almost laughed. She packed a small bag, threw in a lacy red bra I hadn't seen in months, and kissed me on the cheek before she left. "You sure you don't mind?" she asked. I looked up from my book. Why would I? She hesitated, just for a second, then forced a smile. "Okay, I'll call you Sunday." I nodded, and just like that, she was gone. Now it was my turn to disappear. Confrontation. Eric lived in a high-rise apartment across town. I had tracked him down earlier that week, so I knew exactly where he'd be. I parked down the street, waiting. Sure enough, around 7:45 p.m., Emma's car pulled up to the building. She stepped out, adjusting her dress in the reflection of the window, checking her hair. She looked eager. Then he appeared. Eric walked out of the building with a casual confidence. His button-down undone at the collar, sleeves rolled up. He smiled at her like he had been waiting all day just to see her. She smiled back. And then, she hugged him. I clenched my fists, but I didn't move. Not yet. I watched as they walked into the lobby together, her arm brushing against his. I waited a few minutes, then got out of my car and followed. The elevator ride to the 20th floor felt like an eternity. I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt. I was ready. I walked down the hall, stopping at apartment 2043, and I knocked. Loud, firm. It took a moment, but then I heard footsteps. The door cracked open slightly, and Eric's face appeared, his eyes narrowing in confusion. "Yeah," he said, clearly irritated. I smiled. "Hey, Eric, can I come in?" His brows furrowed. Do I know?" And then he froze, because behind him, Emma appeared in the hallway. Her eyes widened in horror. The color drained from her face. I saw it all click in her mind. The realization, the panic, the sudden understanding that I knew. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. I smiled at her. A slow, calculated smile. "Hey, babe," I said calmly. "Having a good time?" She looked between me and Eric, her mouth moving soundlessly. I. Eric, to his credit, caught on quickly. He stepped between us, holding up a hand. "Listen, man. I don't know what you think is happening, but..." I chuckled. "Oh, I know exactly what's happening." Then, I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen. Text messages. Screenshots. I held it up for them both to see. Emma's face collapsed. She looked at me with something close to terror. I tilted my head. Still think I didn't notice, Emma? She opened her mouth, then closed it. She had no defense. Eric exhaled sharply, rubbing the back of his neck. Shit. I turned to him. Oh, you think you're in trouble? I shook my head. No, buddy. She is. Emma's hands trembled. Please. Let's just talk. I laughed. Talk? Oh, now you want to talk. She took a shaky step forward, reaching for me instinctively. Like she was still my wife, like she still had that right. I stepped back. Cold. Unreachable. Her hand fell uselessly to her side. You wanted space, Emma? I said softly. Now you have all of it. Her face twisted in panic. No, wait. I turned to leave. Wait! She cried, her voice breaking. Where are you going? I looked over my shoulder. Home, I said. Then I smiled. Oh, and by the way, change of plans. You're not coming back. And then I walked out, leaving her exactly where she belonged, with the nothing she had chosen. Now it was time for the final step, the last nail in the coffin, the moment that would make sure she truly understood what she had lost. It was time to end this, forever. I didn't go home right away. Not yet. There was one final step left. Emma thought she still had control, that she could beg, cry, fix things. She had no idea that I had already erased her from my life. The ultimate goodbye. By the time I got home, the divorce papers were waiting for her. I had spent the last 2 weeks preparing everything. Bank accounts separated. Legal consultations finalized. The house already signed over to me. She thought she was going away for the weekend with her boyfriend. She had no clue she was leaving her entire life behind. I changed the locks, packed her things, put them in neatly labeled boxes on the front lawn. And then, I sent her a message. Me, you don't live here anymore. Check the driveway. Delivered. Read. 3 dots appeared. She was typing, then stopping, then typing again. Finally, a message came through. Emma, wait. Please. Just talk to me. I smiled. No. No more talking. No more pleading. She made her choice. And I had made mine. The last goodbye. It was past midnight when she finally showed up. She pulled into the driveway fast, barely braking before jumping out. I watched from the window as she stared at the boxes, her expression one of pure, utter disbelief, like she couldn't comprehend that this was real. She turned, eyes scanning the house, searching for me. I let her knock, let her bang on the door, let her call out my name, her voice cracking with desperation. I just stood there, watching, silent, unmoved. I didn't open the door, didn't give her the satisfaction. Finally, she slumped against the frame, sobbing into her hands. And for the first time in weeks I felt something again. Satisfaction. Vindication. Not because I wanted her pain, but because she had finally realized, too late, that she had destroyed everything. She had wanted space. She had wanted freedom. And now she had all of it. Alone. The aftermath. I moved on faster than she did. That much was obvious. I never responded to her texts, her emails, the letters she even tried to send. I let her drown in the silence she once craved. Word got around. Turns out, Eric wasn't exactly the Prince Charming she had convinced herself he was. A serial cheater, according to some of Emma's old coworkers. A guy who got bored fast. 3 months after I left her, he had already moved on. Emma? She had nothing. No relationship. No home. No security. And the best part? She knew she had done it to herself. Final closure. Months later, I ran into her by accident. A coffee shop downtown. She looked different. Not the polished, put-together woman I had once known. She looked smaller. Tired. Hollow. She saw me before I could turn away. Her eyes widened. Hope flashing in them for a brief, pathetic second. Hey! She said softly, like we were old friends, like she still had some claim on me. I just nodded. Cool. Detached. Then I turned away. No words. No second chances. Because Emma didn't deserve closure. She deserved exactly what she got. Nothing. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.